So our next speaker, I would like to welcome Mr. Ziv Ofek to the stage. Ziv Ofek is a serial entrepreneur and a leader in the e-health sector. You were talking about unified health record. So Ziv is probably behind this initiative, right? He's the founder and chief innovation officer at DB Motion, which was sold in 2013 for $235 million. Mr. Ofek's inventions are used in thousands of hospitals and clinics around the world, and he is currently working as the CEO and founder of MDClone. Please welcome to the stage, Mr. Ziv Ofek.
Good afternoon. I would like to talk with you a little bit about the data in healthcare, to focus more on the data and some issues and opportunities around the data. But I would like also to share with you some different concepts around how to secure or deliver the data today. So we all agree that we have enough data today. If we look at the healthcare IT in general, we can divide it into three generations. The first one, about 20, 30 years ago, was all about how to get the data to the machines. The generation of EMRs going here in the US, here it's for more than 20 years. Then the second generation was only focused on how to connect the dots. Once I have the data spread all over the place, how do I connect the dots in order to see one patient? And this is where the DB Motion, my previous life, was all about how to connect the dots around the patients. And now we all agree and realize the value of the data today, that we have enough data, the needs for the data are growing rapidly, more and more demands for this data, more techniques. We talk about artificial intelligence, machine learning, data science, innovation. But we also know that in most places around the world, when it gets to asking for the data, the situation looks like this. It's always cumbersome, it always takes a long time, involve many people, many barriers around everything. Where the data is stored, what the format of the data, who knows how to get the data, what the language of the data, and so on and so forth. And a lot of this is also around privacy issues and concerns around this. So the industry started to talk about the technology about maybe 10 years ago, 8 years ago, and you know the concept of big data. Big data is that word that appears in our life every 4 years that everyone says and no one really knows what he means. We have another definition for big data. We believe that if you think big and you have the data, it's big data. All the rest are only technologies, very boring. It will be different technologies tomorrow. The problem in healthcare is those who can think big do not have the data, in most cases. And those who have the data do not know how to think big enough. And the way the industry chose forever to bridge between these gaps, between these two entities, is by putting mediators, right? Many, many mediators. IT experts, legal, bureaucratic, data user agreement, business agreement, legal agreement, IRB. So many things in between me and the data that turn it to be very, very slow data. What if you can think about a new paradigm, saying instead of improving the mediators, by the way, if you go to a common network in US, you will find between 50 to 100 people on their payroll, all their job is just to harvest data from computers. So what if we can start thinking about a completely new paradigm and removing the mediators completely, and try to think about a new universe where all the data is available to any user, no excuses, no prerequisite, any user. I don't have to have any skills in computer whatsoever. I don't have to be a SQL expert. I want to ask any question. Don't give me your excuses that the data is not ready for me, is not available for me, is not organized for me. I want to ask absolutely any question. I want to get it in zero time. I don't want to wait for months. I have a question, I want to get the answer in minutes, without talking with anyone and with zero risk for patient privacy. Which means, can I get the data I just got, put it on a flash drive and in the internet and nothing will happen? Absolutely nothing. And if I can do this, maybe I can remove the mediators and remove all the bottlenecks. We've been in this industry for almost ever. We know that each one of these lines of submission cannot be met today. What if we can live in a universe that data is truly democratized, truly liberated to everyone that needs the data? And the way to do it is to think differently, or to have come up with a new paradigm for two main barriers in healthcare. I will only focus on two. The first one, which doesn't connect directly to security or data security, but it's very important to understand, is where I store the data and, most importantly, how I store the data. And one of the main barriers in healthcare today that the data is always stored in the wrong way. We store it in tables and talk about the tables and fields and databases. This is a typical medical center in US. There's about 600 tables here. And everyone that tried to query this database knows that I have to wait for David. He's an expert. He's not here today. He's the only one that knows how to connect this table to that table, and there's no one else that can do this. And he's so busy that I have to wait 5 months for the guy. About 2 decades ago, the industry understood that, okay, we have to come up with a new approach. Let's do things ahead of time. Let's pre-cook things. And then the universe of, this multidimensional dashboards, graphs, metrics, measures, million things. The good thing about these things that are pre-cooked, that if the question is there, if the answer is there, I don't need to do anything. Just click a button every day and I get it. The problem in healthcare is that my questions, your questions, can never, ever fit to that. 99% of your questions can never fit to something that is pre-cooked before. It's a question I have now, ad hoc. It's a complex question. It's a timeline to the question and story. And because it's so complicated, every question I have turns to be a project. Going back to this team and wait forever. Many people, 1-year project, one-off example. So the new paradigm should talk about something new. So instead of just trying to represent the data in this very complex way, what if I can start, as you said, start to talk about patients? Let's tell the patient stories. And instead of talking about databases and indexes and fields, let's talk about patients. Let's tell the patient stories, where every patient has one unique, holistic, unified, longitudinal story from birth to death, that everything that happened with the patient across the entire system becomes the story with multiple events. I got born, I got diagnosed, I got operated, I discharged, maybe I got divorced, this is what it cost me, patient reported, omics, everything you can think of become part of my story. And once I have this organized in a longitudinal way with a smart query system on top of this, then you can find the any user come in place. And you can go in and see that people can ask any question without understanding the data complexity behind it. The other one has to do with security and privacy. And today it's easier to talk about the challenges because we know today, unlike maybe 10 years ago, that if you try to de-identify data, someone will re-identify the data. I don't have to re-identify all the data. It's enough to re-identify 10%, 20%. No one wants to see thousands of patients in the internet. And by the way, the techniques to re-identify data are growing today much faster than those techniques that try to de-identify data. And you will never, ever feel secured enough to truly liberate the data and democratize the data. And the stories are all over the place. Every day you hear another story somewhere around the world. We know about the GDPR. It becomes tougher and tougher when it gets to data democratization. So the new paradigm starts to say, instead of fighting the endless game between lawyers and users, between privacy and utilization, never ever agree where to put the bar between us. Because of that, we always land here. Everything is on hold. What if we can provide an environment that I can do 100% of both? Imagine an environment that I can have 100% utilization, no limitation, no constraints, no barriers, but at the same exact time, there's no patient privacy at all. And the only way to do this is to think outside the box, because in nature, every de-identification tool is in risk to be re-identified. And one of the approaches to try to do this is try to talk about synthetic data. And the idea behind this, I will try to explain with this image. Let's do the analogy between an elephant for a second and a population. And I'm very curious to learn everything I can about this elephant population. But I'm not allowed to get close enough and look at the elephant. What the industry tells me is back off for a second, I will manipulate the elephant. Million techniques, right? I can add hash, I can drop things, I can change the date, I can do something with the data in order to provide you the manipulated elephant. Two very bad things happen. First of all, no one wants someone to ruin the data for me. If you drop the zip code by HIPAA, if you drop the date by HIPAA, it's very bad for me. If you change the data, you harm the statistics behind this. And by the way, there's still elephant in the room. They don't even claim that I had the elephant here. And the reason for that is by nature, everything I do on the left-hand side is with real patients, right? On the right-hand side, there are also real patients. They are hidden somewhere, but they're real patients. So if I work hard enough, I will find some of these real patients or real people. The new paradigm says, what if I can take a different approach, which will sound a little bit crazy to you for the first second, but bear with me. If I can look at the elephant, learn everything about the elephant in any angle and variation, but instead of manipulating the elephant, I'm doing something completely different. I'm creating a new elephant. From scratch. The elephant I created does not exist in real life. It's my elephant. If you look at the elephant I created from scratch, you will see and notice that everything in the elephant I created from scratch is exactly identical to the original elephant, with one difference. If I zoom into the elephant I created, you will see the elephant I created is composed of a completely different set of pixels than the original elephant. A pixel is a human being, individual. So I was able to create the same exact picture with completely different set of individuals. In other words, if I have a cohort of 950 people that tells any amount of statistical stories I'm interested to learn, but it's very hard for me to get these people, very risky for me to get the people. It will take me months to get the cohort. What if I can create a new cohort from scratch, never ever the same number because of differential privacy issues? These people I created do not exist in real life. The data about the patients do not exist in real life. But the statistical stories, that if I give you this cohort or this cohort, will be the same all the way to the end. What happened in this case, that you can provide an environment that those who have the permission to get real data by a click of a button, few minutes, will get the real data. But if I don't have a permission to get the real data, if it takes too long, if there are too many committees in between me and the data, if I don't even know if my hypothesis works before I get the data, why should I wait 6 months until I know that there's no correlation in the data elements? What if I can, by a click of a button, without talking with anyone whatsoever, I can get the synthetic cohort? For your naked eyes, it will look the same. There's a male, 57 years old, with this glucose, this HDL, this urea, and so on and so forth. This patient and this patient do not exist in real life, but if you zoom in and look at the dots in synthetic patients, you will see that this dot is not here, and these two dots are not here. They are not real patients here. They are not the same patients. But the statistics behind this will tell you exactly the same for any question you have, for any statistical model you have in mind, and for every study you would like to run. What happens as a result is that for the first time ever, while everyone is talking about human subject research that drives many, many constraints, all of a sudden you are talking about a non-human subject research. Although it's exactly the same. I get it as raw data, I can run it in my R machine or SPSS machine, I can do everything I can with the real data, but I'm a non-human subject research. And with that concept, for example, if you ask if it works or not, you can go to Rambam Medical Center, Professor Biar is here, the CEO, and see that the concept, as crazy as it sounds, not only that it works over and over again in multiple researches and so on, something more amazing happened that the IRB committee in the medical center decided in an official protocol that if you work with synthetic data, you don't have to submit for IRB. You can open your computer in the morning, and 5 minutes after, you can ask any question you want. You can give it to anyone you want. You can give it to the student from the university to run their data science exercise and so on, and get the same exact results before you ask for real data. Now, this is only the first part, and I'm not going to talk about the second part, just to tease your imagination, that in a universe where data is democratized and liberated, then all the use cases look different. If I talk about the concept that I can come to a medical center and put a sandbox, and instead of asking for data in kilograms and be very at risk to put the data somewhere, what if I can come to the medical center and not asking for the data, asking for the permission to play in the virtual environment? And if I have this virtual environment installed in many, many places, what if I can sit somewhere around the world and in minutes can query all those sandboxes around the world? Think about what happened with the quality of management or population management. If I can run the whole project of population management instead of years, by 1 hour maybe, and do the whole cycle by myself as a physician or a head of department or a policymaker, think about the precision medicine. The risk to put genotypic data with phenotypic data at the same exact repository is very dangerous. What if I can do this easily and give it to anyone I'd like? Think about all the issues around real-world data analysis, real-world evidence analysis, clinical trials. That is much, much faster and so on. So there are many, many ways to think about a universe that is in a data-liberated environment, and I encourage us to do this. Thank you very much for your time.